Sue Hubbard is, as you know, a distinguished novelist, a distinguished art critic. Many of you will know her work in that realm, and a very fine poet. And we're now tonight celebrating the launch of this wonderful new book, Sue Hubbard, Swimming to Albania, which I hope you'll all be picking up and buying. I think there's a pile of books out the front there. A wonderful painting by Barbara Ray on the cover. And I think the cover actually reflects so much of the wonderful qualities of this book. Its visual power, its sense of space and time, its emotional force. And we're just going to have a 10-minute conversation exploring that a little bit before Sue gives us the pleasure of reading for about 20 minutes a group of her poems. Sue, let's just sort of start off with the structure of the book. It's in 3 sections. The first section very much talks about your father, if you don't mind my saying so. The second section is very much about your beloved Ireland. And the third section is has a focus on your journeys through Portugal and Italy. And the final poem of this, the idea of swimming to Albania as a kind of viewpoint, which we'll kind of talk about as we go along. You've got this quote by W.B. Yeats in the beginning.
I can remember what it was.
Well, I'm going to read it. Quickly. Maybe we've got it. So, what is past, or passing, or to come? Was that just sort of? Did you use that quote as a way of trying to explain what you do with the 3 sections of the book?
That's more deliberate than I ever am, Steve, as you must know from working to me. Steve is my sort of poetry buddy and wonderful sort of person to, because he's a fine poet himself, to bounce things off. I think any of you who have read my novel Rain Songs or previous collections will know that in a Proustian way, if that doesn't sound too grandizing, I'm very concerned with how the past connects to the present, and what is past, what is present, and so that seemed an apt quote. It wasn't until Bernard O'Donoghue very eruditely talked about Anglo-Saxon trilogies that I thought, oh, is that what it is in 3 parts? But they seem to fall into sections. The first section are remembered childhood, and of course the strange thing about childhood is, I have a terrible memory, so how much of it is invented, how much is it emotionally true, how much of it is fact. Also, during the writing of this book, I lost both my parents, and so there's a lot of that sort of, not nostalgia, I don't think I'm very nostalgic. And then the central section deals more with other sorts of loss, I suppose. And I think the whole book is a journey. And the final line of the book is, and this journey ceases. So I think it's not very original for a writer to talk about journeys, but I think, like Jason or Kavafi or any of these people that Jason and the Argonauts, not Jason the poet, the idea of the journey, or the trials and tribulations of the journey, and how you go through it and how you manage that. I think most of us just call it life. But
these poems have been written very much during the pandemic period, haven't they?
Not the earliest ones.
Okay.
No, the final ones were finished in lockdown.
But I'm just sort of thinking this is a time when we've not been able to make many journeys. So, in a sense, the book feels for me very much about that sort of the journey of the imagination during lockdown. That time when that period of it's been nearly 2 years, when we've had that space to reflect and to start to work in different ways.
Well, in all honesty, a lot of these were written during residencies.
Right.
always write well in residences. Anybody that has any residences up their sleeve, I'd like one to. I mean, in Ireland, which was very important for rain songs, and there are a couple of poems here in another part of Ireland that I wrote on a residency. The Portuguese ones, I had a weird residency in a weird suburb of Portugal, and the final ones in Greece as well, and the central ones in Siena, and I spent a very cold spring in Siena for a month and virtually spoke to nobody, which forced me to look at a lot of art and write a lot of poems. So I think it's this sense of also being away, being outside, as well as the journey. And when you're outside these places, you know, I don't speak Portuguese. I don't speak Italian, I can understand it. But I mean, a total outsider. It, you know, it forces you back into your own language. I think that's what happens.
There's a lovely sense of space and time in the book. I mean, the first poem, Lost in Space, you're really talking about your interiority and your emotional interiority as, in relationship to the universe and quarks and all sorts of things, you know, about physics and about far, far, far away spaces. And then you go all the way through these passages of, Portugal and Italy, right through to dear old Clissold Park. So there's this kind of movement to Clissold Park. And that kind of affection for home and for a sort of space.
Well, I think when I get to read the first poem, which I will read, it ends with the word home, and I think that's what this book, that's what the journey is. And you're right about the interiority of it, because people said, well, that's a really interesting title, Swing to Albania. But of course it's a metaphor. I mean, and just as in my novel, Rain Songs, the Skelligs, out there that you couldn't get to were a metaphor, and Swimming to Albania is just as much as a metaphor.
There's a sort of wonderful sense of colour and form.
From an artist, that's great.
Yeah, you know, and you know, we all know your appetite for the visual arts and your writing on the visual arts, and whenever we read your reviews, we're always aware of your excitement when you see paintings and you see sculpture or whatever. You know, that kind of real appetite for the colour that painters are using. And I mean, I think that's sort of somehow, I feel very much within the context of that of the cover. You know, you selected that. You went through a lot of thoughts about it. You selected it because it sort of expressed a lot of your sort of sense of a kind of you as a painter in a funny kind of way.
Well, as somebody said, actually, rather denigratory in a poetry, in a review of some book, a poet who likes to think she's a painter. That was supposed to be a put down, I think.
No, I think it's a compliment. And I just wanted to point out some terrific lines you've got here. Narrative Grace, page 69. The blood red darkness. You know, the way that you're wanting colour to really go deep into some sense of emotional experience. Then you've got a lovely sense of the psychology of form and space in M, page 26. I collide with your absence, which I thought was a wonderful idea about coming to terms with your father and the memories of, or the sort of photographic memory as an airman, but also using that sort of sense of his own experience of space. That's absolutely brilliant. You know, really lovely. I mean, what do you want to sort of say something more about?
I probably don't. I probably will, read some of those poems and let people. And I think you've said very eloquently things and put out things that I sort of have thought but wouldn't have necessarily, articulated in that way. But I probably don't want to add to what you said.
Well, the last line of the book, as you say, the last line of the book is, and this journey ceases. But the journey isn't ceasing, is it? I mean, this creative journey is not ceasing. I know
we're all postmodern now. Ambiguity is everything.
Well, I also know that you've got another 2 collections that you're working with. So, So, Sue, would you like to read now?
Yes, okay, thanks.
So Sue Hubbard's going to read for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Steve, so much. So I'm going to just read for a maximum of 20 minutes, I suppose. And as Steve said, this is in 3 parts. It does start the first section with this quote from W.B. Yeats, of what is past, or passing, or to come. The first poem is called Lost in Space. There are galaxies inside me, interstellar stars and dust. I'm full of dark matter, quarks and spirals of deep love that cannot be seen with the naked eye. Lives that might have been different under other alignments. Somewhere amid black holes and the absorption of light, beyond the massive Milky Way, there's a distant room. The walls covered with faded flowers, a meadow of flecked sunlight, where a child lies beneath a bleached quilt in a narrow bed, dreaming of a boat with a single blue sail, a boat that will take her home. This next poem is a poem about adolescence, and a poem that I think many of us here are of an age to appreciate it. It's called Snow. Lost in an infinity of misted mirrors, among shells of Optrex, Pepsodent and pink calamine, I dunked net petticoats into sugar solution to froth out the nylon frills of that first dance dress. Hanging it to drip dry over the porcelain sink, I squeezed obdurate adolescent flesh into a rubber roll-on that chafed my thighs, attached 15 deniers to silk suspenders before turning to straighten the wayward seam along a newly shaved leg and wriggling into my strapless wonder bra. Then spitting into the little Bakelite box to soften the black wax, a flick of mascara applied with a tiny brush. Backcombing my hair, the lady on the tin of Elnet hairspray smiled with a poise I knew I could never master. So much preparation to end alone beneath the rotating mirror ball as the last walls faded and flakes of light spangled my bare arms in falling snow. This next poem is also an adolescent poem, sort of transitional into the next one. It's called Silver Service. Why should I remember? After 50 years, that 13-year-old crushed among the putrid hotel bins behind the steamy kitchen door, a meaty odour of gravy seeping from his acneed skin. How little I knew as his wet tongue slithered between my untutored lips, his bitten fingers searched for the hooks along my cotton schoolgirl bra. I hardly knew whether the terror of detection or the growing hardness inside his waiter's trousers pressed against my yellow summer dress frightened me more. Was this love, I wondered? Upstairs, in the mirrored dining room, a tuxedoed band was playing Fools Rush In, while my parents waited for silver service. I mentioned residences, and I've spent a lot of time in Ireland, and I have two Irish representatives here, one who I met on a residency, and one who's related to somebody else I met on a residency. And all because of my friend over there, Hugh O'Donoghue, somewhere he is, who started, fantastic painter, who started, oh there he is over there, who started me off on the whole Irish thing. So I feel I should be an honorary Irish woman after Rain Songs and now this with an Irish publisher. Anyway, the reason for talking about Ireland is that this poem was written, my father was very ill, he died when he was in his late 90s, and I was on a residency on the west coast, which is not the easiest place to get to of Ireland, and had this phone call that he was extremely ill, and I was really wondering how I was possibly going to get back, or whether he might die before I got back. So this is the poem. And soon it will be over. The voyage's end coming into sight, like a bright spit of unmapped land, as the old yawl turns slowly back into harbour, with its arbour of rusty fish sheds shrouded in late evening fog. The saffron light of portholes already dimmed, the tattered sails lowered, halyard and spinnakers stilled and trimmed, furled jibs lashed against the mast. A sea away, I wait on this Atlantic headland, where icy galaxies keep me company in the dark, and a dog fox barks in a high, wet field, while in those far-off Surrey hills you falter and wane. So I wish my childhood songs had not been mined in dust and pain, those black diamonds of hurt and absence. And now, when all that's unspoken is cinders on my tongue, I want to call out, Daddy, oh my daddy, I've been here all along, waiting across this cold, violet sea. The next one I'm going to read is the one Steve referred to. I also wrote this in Ireland. I've been looking through an old album, a black and white album of photographs. Our generation will probably all have those of our parents. And this is one of my father when he was very young in flying gear, training for the RAF. I must say he crashed his plane before he ever flew and went into intelligence. But anyway, he was dressed up as an airman here. Airman. Somewhere on the other side of the evening, where the weather hangs heavy in the darkening sky, I search for you in the firelight as the room turns its face to the past. I can't tell the year, though you're young, dressed in flying gear, looking upwards at something beyond the camera's edge, with a touch of Kenneth Moore saying, reach for the sky. Though I look for you in the present tense, you remain obdurate in black and white, your life ahead, a choice of wives, 3 as yet unnamed children. How do I make sense of dust, insubstantial as the shadows on these whitewashed walls? What alchemy might give you substance? Invest this space with all that was you as evening lengthens and I collide with your absence, with all that was never said. This moves into the next section, and I love the Portuguese poet many of you may know, called Fernando Pessoa, who wrote in many personae, and this section starts with, "My past is everything I failed to be." And the poem I'm going to read here is based on the story that we all know from childhood, The Little Mermaid. And it's always something that moved me, that she was prepared to have her tail cut in half and walk on knives for her prince. Dubious perhaps, who knows. Anyway, this is called Earth Dreams, and it starts with a little quote from Hans Christian Andersen. "But a mermaid has no tears, and therefore suffers so much more. All night I dreamt of land, of soil crumbling through my fingers to leave black parings under broken nails, of fields spread with dung and that melancholy light of autumn, the colours of clay and fire, where morning has a yellow tongue. Could I exist in air? In this oceanic deep, you lie embedded in the womb of my heart, attached by an umbilicus of longing, my aqueous nightgown transparent as air. I don't even know who this you is, though I've pictured your all too human body naked on my bed of cowrie shells, visualized our house of cloth and tar, ash walls mortared with the glue of boiled fish bones. Water accepts everything, even the misshapen. Over and over I've tried to imagine a need for balance, that slow steadying of the inner ear, metatarsals pushing into solid ground. Yet though I wait and wait, time returns me only to myself, as night to morning, as sea to the shore. But where your voice should be, there is only silence. Now the next couple of poems again take me back to Ireland, a different part of Ireland. I was just about to drink Steve's wine.
Please do.
No, I can't drink and read because my tongue goes floppy. This is the Tara and Guthrie Centre, and I very sadly had a residency just before COVID, and I had to cancel it, and then God knows when I'll be able to go back now, because everybody will want to go back. But anyway, it's very different to the West Coast. It's Tara and Guthrie's house, wonderful Anglo-Irish house and ground with a big dark lake there, and it's very black, and I have swum in it, and it's very, very cold. So there are three poems here about that lake. Stigmata. Out walking at dawn, the early morning spreads like hope newborn across the pewter lake. In the deep hush, all is possibility. The sun rising to burnish the deep, dark water, but pushing through the dense summer undergrowth, I lose the narrow path and slash my leg on briars, so blackberries of blood gather in a bright beaded anklet. Sorry, it's can't completely sing. Okay, that's better. This one is simply called Lake. And even with all the forgiving, the being in this moment and this, following every tilt and shift of the world, the stillness of snow, the seeping of grey dawn over the grimy sill, the cloudy light of the city and its stale breathing. It's then I think of that dark lake. The trees leaning out over its black mirrored skin, fringed with purple loose strife that grows along the edge of slow-moving water, the bulrushes reflected in its anthracite depths, and imagine diving down and down into that icy water, through duckweed and pools of green algae, watermeal and water hyacinths, milfoil and hydrilla, to be caught in tendrils of curly leaf pondweed. Then on, deeper still, past clasping leaf pondweed with its thin and delicate oval-shaped leaves, that wide and wavy coontail that lacks any true roots, and the naiad and sago pondweed, to where light ceases, downwards with this cold seal body towards that lost thing, that special thing I know is there in the muddy depths, till I can no longer go on holding my breath. This is the last lake poem. There are a couple of others, but this is the last one I'm going to read. It's called Last Look. The last day at the lake, and the page of dark water remains inscrutable. Late summer sun decorates its untroubled surface with swirls of September calligraphy. Fallen leaves bob on the copper swells, votives to a past summer that promised so much. A single moorhen does what moorhens do. The breeze is still warm against hungry skin, but beneath the calm are depths of black water, tangles of duckweed that can pull the swimmer down, nostrils and lungs clogging with thick sludge, the words all drowned. This is moving into the third section, which begins with a quote, which seems quite appropriate. I don't know where I found it, but looking through things. Well, I mean, I know where it's from, but I don't know. Which is from Sorrow. Not till we have lost the world do we begin to feel ourselves and find ourselves and realise who we are. So this one is very much about journeys. I did a residency in Siena. It was a very cold month, and it was absolutely freezing in the flat I was in. And I don't speak Italian, and I didn't know anybody there, and I was there for a month. And as I said, I saw a lot of art, and I ended up writing a lot of poems. Not fun, but good for work. So there's quite a few of these Sienese poems, and this is called Lost. This is where you've arrived. City of dreams and shadows, a maze of nameless streets, closed entrance halls and small squares. Steps of red roof tiles rise on 3 hills enclosing the suckling she-wolf inside bastion walls. Loneliness rings from the tongues of the campanile. Swallows swoop at home in their own sky. The light is fading, and bright restaurants fill with lives that are not yours. Couples kiss in the Piazza del Campo as evening gathers in a corner of the square. A waiter brings a basket of bread, a carafe of wine. Desire fills the empty spaces. There's nowhere to get to anymore. So, arm in arm with what might have been, you make your passeggiata past courtyards and shuttered windows, with no way of knowing which direction points home. This is also in Siena. I mentioned the poet Cavafy, who I like very much, the Greek poet. Wrote some wonderful poems about journeying and sailing, and he wrote one about a room, and I sort of borrowed it slightly to write my own version. Mine's called Afternoon in Siena, after Cavafy. Soon I will know this room. It will have become familiar. Then, sometime after I've left, they'll rent it to another writer or a student or a couple on holiday for a long weekend. For now, I'll try to fix it in my mind, this ordinary room with its cold tile floor without a rug, the low chair and ugly wardrobe with its foxed glass, the shuttered windows that open onto the narrow street where in the evening a small dog yaps and yelps beneath the washing line, the purple canopy of wisteria. And in the corner, the messy bed, where in another life we might have made love, the afternoon sun bathing us in liquid light. If only I knew who you were. This one is written, it was called The Sanctuary House of St. Catherine of Siena, and I like the fact that there were lots of female saints that I kept bumping into them. Not literally. Perhaps their bones, but anyway, I was struck by that I wanted to light a candle there and I couldn't. It was Easter. Easter Sunday, alone in this strange city, I'm suddenly aware I'm old. Not very old, but not young anymore, which is what I'm used to. Walking in the pale dawn, believing that tomorrow will be different from today. Standing in front of a glass to paint my lips red before scanning the crowd for a face that might mirror a flicker of desire. How did it happen that what I've grown used to should so sneakily change? White roses and laurels decorate St. Catherine's sacred house. I'd light a candle to us both, but there's only a row of cheap electric lights where, when you place your money in a slot, a naked bulb lights up momentarily. Yes, we're coming sort of to I read about 3, 4 more. This is called Travelling Alone, and this was written in the weirdest residence I thought it was going to be in Lisbon, and it was a flat on the wrong side of the river, in this incredibly run-down, actually very fascinating place. If it was London, it would all be full of artists. There were all these collapsed old houses. It was very strange. Anyway, I had this little flat. I literally more or less spoke to nobody for a month, and it's called Travelling Alone. From this high kitchen window, I look down on a small suburban square where old meets new, nodding like polite acquaintances, lifting their hats in the morning sun. The concrete mini-market and hair salon, the dream cafe where under white umbrellas ladies of a certain age chatter over Cafe Pingado and Pastia de Nata. Last evening, my first small patches of yellowing sunlight netted the park's gravel, its faded grass, cross-hatching the statue, the hubbub of children, girls in clusters wedded to their mobile phones, old men on benches smoking, for whom this place is home. How did I get from there to here? What route led me in search of a heart to call my own, though I've wiped shit from babies' bums, held the frail hands of the dying? I'm orphaned from myself, lost in a landscape that despite endless movement doesn't change. Voices I don't understand blow in through the open window. I pick up my pen and begin to write, unpacking these words to discover what I've become. And I think, so I'll just read the last few poems. The next two I'm going to read were written in Greece. And I'm sure you're also well-travelled, you'll know that what the Meltemi is, which is, it's like the Sirocco in Greece, you know, that sort of dry wind that blows. It's called Not Simply Air. All morning, the dry Meltemi lifts the waves like sneaky Neptune peering under his daughter's frilled skirts. I came here to find form and structure, to feel my feet planted firmly along the blue earth spine, toes curled for balance around its bony nodules. Through the wind's fierce hiss, I can hear the Aegean speaking in its own tongue, indifferent to desire and history, the fragile longing for the fingertips of an unknown hand to brush the salted strand of hair from my sunburnt skin, reminding me that I'm not simply air. This is the title poem of the book, and people ask me very literally, it isn't literal. I did get the idea of it sitting on the beach in Corfu, looking out to Albania. I'd been on a similar beach looking out to Albania 30 years before with my ex-husband when Albania was communist, and it seemed like a place you couldn't, you know, it was they might have had dinosaurs there for all one knew, and yet it was only 3 miles away. So this is a more recent trip. I was doing yoga then, and but of course, like the Skelligs, as I say in Rain Song, it's a metaphor. Swimming to Albania. At night, the solitary moon swims outside my window, phosphorescence spangling her milky skin. Though she rides and surfs the waves, carefree as a dolphin, her body remembers how once blind night hauled her into its secret bed, feeling beneath her seaweed camisole with its tongue of shadows. But for now, she must swim alone, disorientated beneath the cloudless sky, while love points its long bone finger towards the mountains ruins of Albania. And this final poem that I'm going to read is not a particular place. It came when I was reading a book on Victorian female travellers, and that's the final poem in the book, and it's called Those Far Blue Hills. I have become a connoisseur of roads, having grown weary of anticipation, of waiting too long in the dark hours for whispered promises and midnight calls. Now I take this solitary journey down hidden byways and lanes, hauling this horsehair body towards those far blue hills and stagnant dikes, the shifting sands and impatient cities. Longing for wilderness, I've become a storyteller of absence and loss, though all travel is a form of return as well as departure. Between barren islands and bare rocks, I trek this narrow path without losing sight of the stony shore where a white hour draws in across the purple sky, and this journey ceases. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for such a wonderful reading of a splendid book.
Thank you.
For all those who have been aroused, your appetite's been aroused to read the book, it's for sale, Salmon Books, at the entrance. I think there's a stack of them there. And Sue, you'll be signing them, won't you?
I will be signing them. It'll make them worth all of half a penal.
Thank you very much, Sue.
So much for coming. It means a great deal that you came out and found your way around the maze of the city to get here, so thank you.